Super Bowl season, February 8th, the Seattle Seahawks are going to play the New England Patriots. You've probably noticed an absolute proliferation of gambling ads across all your feeds, on every TV channel. Have you ever wondered why that is? My name is Liam Young. I'm a professor of communication and media studies. I teach a course on sports and media. It's part of my academic research, and I can tell you a little bit about how this has come to be. Part of that has to do with changes in the economics of sports, particularly around COVID-19. We all remember we were in lockdown, nobody could go to the games, the stadiums were empty, and the league started to kind of bleed money. They needed revenue. They started to kind of freak out a little bit, and the gambling companies were there with tons of money that they had raised from private capital. So we saw all kinds of partnerships emerge with leagues and gambling companies, teams and gambling companies. Even some athletes like Connor McDavid were shooting ads for gambling companies. Related to that economic question, professional sports franchises have only increased in value over the last 25 years. The Los Angeles Lakers just sold for $10 billion. That is a lot of money, and a lot of new people who historically haven't been part of the sports industry have moved in to ownership positions. They want a return on that investment. Television revenue has historically been the main source of revenue for owners, but they see the writing on the wall, television is transforming, and so partnerships with gambling companies is a way to supplement that and get a return on that investment. There's also really important changes to the culture of sports. So what it is to be a fan has changed. More and more people play fantasy sports, particularly fantasy football and fantasy baseball. We're also watching sports differently on our phones, on our iPads, on the bus, in class, as well as on traditional television. So those modes of fandom are a little more flexible, they're a little more interactive, and it leads people to kind of change the way that they think about how they engage with sports. The gambling companies have created apps that you can use on your phone that sort of speak to that transformation in the culture of fandom. And that technological question is really important. In some ways, television is now the second screen. When we're watching something, we're glued to our phones. We're scrolling, we're messaging, and the gambling app now mediates that relationship and keeps you connected to the television screen in a way that is really good for the leagues and their advertising partners. Another thing we should talk about is data, right? We can measure sports with ever finer precision. We know exactly how quickly a pitcher's arm is coming around. We can measure to the millimeter where the ball is. We have more and more instant replay. This creates data that the gambling companies have turned into opportunities, right? You can bet on almost anything you can imagine in a sports game. This also has produced a lot of uncertainty and controversy. We have some athletes getting caught having wagered on games or partnered with people or feeding information to gambling partners about injuries or things that historically have not been out in the public discourse. We've seen basketball players be banned from the league, suspended for a year. This is only going to get more and more complicated because part of what has happened over the last 15 or 20 years is the leagues just rushed into these partnerships with gambling companies, but they didn't really suss out what is this going to look like, how can we be proactive to prevent these types of controversies. You hear unions for the athletes talk about how it's not clear, the leagues haven't been clear in communicating these things to them. So there's a whole scope, a whole range of problems that the leagues are now kind of on the back foot trying to solve as we go along. So I've given you a kind of snapshot into some of the ways we might think about this as a problem in communication and media studies that involve things like policy, culture, technology, data, economics, and ethics. You could do worse than use those 6 terms to describe what communication and media studies is all about.